The thing about cities is, they weren't made for cars. They were made for people, but over the last 100 odd years, cars have sort of taken them over. So how do we reclaim cities for the pedestrian? Well, by replacing cars with something smaller and cleverer, like this. This is the City Transformer CT1, and it's pretty small at the moment, but if I press this button, yeah, now it's really small. Press it again, and out they go. This is the only car that you can buy with a shape-shifting chassis, and that, I'm sure you'll agree, is awesome. But is it any more than that? Is this a gimmick or a game changer? Well, to find out, I've come here to Munich to seek out some narrow gaps. This is the City Transformer CT1, and this is the Fully Charged Show.
Like the Fully Charged Show? Then you will love our 6 live shows being held around the world in 2023, starting with Sydney, Australia on March the 11th and 12th.
So then, dudes, what on earth have we here today? Look at this thing. Look at this. This is the City Transformer CT1. This is an Israeli creation from an Israeli company. This particular one I have here is an advanced prototype which has done thousands of miles of testing and has been homologated here in Germany. And the plan is to have full-scale production up and running by late 2024, early 2025. And the backstory of this company, the thinking behind this thing, is much the same as all the other micro cars that we've covered on the channel. Namely, that big 2-ton, 5-seater cars are fundamentally unsuitable for urban transport, and also just really not that sustainable. Even if they are electric and have interiors furnished with recycled wetsuits, they're just not that sustainable. So we need to go smaller and we need to go lighter, but not everyone feels safe on a motorbike or an e-scooter. Not everyone wants to ride those in the dead of winter when it's bastard cold like it is today, which is where this new crop of micro cars comes in. Anyway, I'll save you the full micro cars are great spiel because we've done it many times already on this channel when covering Renault Twizy, Citroën Ami, Carver, Microlino most recently. I'm already convinced that vehicles like this will play a huge part in our future. That's not the question of the day. The question of the day is, what about this one? Why is this one worth your attention if you are indeed considering a small urban transportation solution of this like? Well, there's only one place to start, and that's the party trick. Now then, let's not mess about. Let's get straight to the thing you came here to see, that shape-shifting chassis. How exactly does this work? Well, right now I'm in unfolded mode, which means I'm 1.4 meters wide and my top speed is about 50 miles per hour. But let's say I need to slim down a bit. All I need to do is be driving between 6 and 30 miles per hour and press this button on the steering wheel for 2 seconds. And all of a sudden, I'm 1 meter wide, with a top speed now limited to 30 miles per hour. It's actually a bit lower on this prototype, but it will be 30 on the production version. What's funny is from where I'm sat, I can't really tell the difference all that much unless I really crane my neck to see if my fenders are out or not. It looks largely the same to me, but I can see from the expressions of people I'm driving past just how bonkers this looks from the outside. Wheels out. Wheels in. Right, I'm going to go unfolded mode. There we go. Now this is how you are, of course, encouraged to do most of your driving, with the wheels unfolded. That way you get the higher top speed and the increased stability. So what on earth is folded mode for? Well, for one, parking. At a meter wide and just 2.5 meters long, this vehicle is more than capable of parking nose in to parking spaces that most cars would have to parallel park into. And when you do that, you can get 4 of these into a space that would normally be occupied by just 1 car. think about what that could potentially mean for city centres if these things were to really catch on in a big way, especially in the context of car sharing schemes. More on that later, because that's very central to this idea. Of course, the other potential advantage of folded mode is filtering, you know, like motorbikes do, squeezing through gaps in traffic, sneaking to the front of the queue. It does depend on if that's legal to do where you live. In Munich, where we're filming today, it sort of isn't, but well, do a little bit. Right, should we have a little poke and a prod? We love a poke and a prod, don't we? It's quite a cool looking thing, isn't it? I mean, aside from the really obviously cool thing that it transforms, quite a smart piece of design. This DRL across the front I really like, quite eye-catching. Charge port is just underneath here. DC fast charging on the City Transformer, up to about 14 kilowatts, but you can plug in to 50 or 100 kilowatt chargers quite safely, which is really, really handy. That's not a feature that we've seen on this category of vehicle before. Around the side, I really like the fact that these fenders extend with the wheels when you pop them out. I suppose that's a legal requirement because you can't just have protruding wheels lest they take the skin off a child's leg as you go past. So that's a safety feature, but also just really speaks to how well engineered this thing is. The fact that all of that extends is still slightly blowing my mind. Now these doors, I was a little bit surprised and ever so slightly disappointed to notice that these doors open the old-fashioned way. On the early prototypes, they had very kind of Koenigsegg-esque scissor doors, really, really cool, and actually quite a sensible solution, because what's the point of being very narrow and being able to park nose in to a metre-wide space if you then need another half a metre to get your door open? They haven't decided just yet what kind of doors they're going to go with on the production version. I'm hoping scissor doors. These ones though, soft close, look. In the back, behind the driver, we have one of two things. Either a surprisingly big boot or room for a small to medium-sized human. The boot literage with that back seat down is 350 litres. I can't show you on this one because the boot doesn't open on this particular prototype. The other one, back at HQ, the boot does open, and as I speak right now, you are magically being shown shots of that. With the seat up, it's not a full-blown two-seater. CT describe it as a 1+1. Bearing in mind that 85% of car journeys are done with a single occupant in the vehicle, they figured, well, let's prioritise the driver, give them lots of room and lots of space, and then squeeze another seat in the back. I am curious to see just how much of a squeeze, and if you can fit two full-size adults. So, Andy, feeling supple? It's nice and warm in there. Oh, look at that! That's it, straddle. Okay, now I'm just gonna... Now then. Yeah. That is... Oh. Ooh, sorry about that. Yeah, I can't get my knee under the wheel. Are you okay, mate?
Yeah.
Shall we get out now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't understand on any fairings.
It's a bye. Interior of the CT1 now then. This is quite interesting. First of all, let me just say, I've got my fenders out. I'm in wide mode at the moment, which is a bit of a faux pas. You're encouraged to always park up in narrow mode. For one, it makes it a lot easier to get out because you don't want to step on that stuff. It's quite delicate. But I just left it that way because it looked cool on camera. Anyway, enough of that. This is quite interesting. This is quite prototypey. A lot of this is going to change over the next year or two, but you can really see what they're going for. And what they're going for is a really quite premium little car experience. They're not going for a super barren, sparse, simple, cheap as possible cabin. They want you to have some creature comforts. So I've got my drive selector, I've got my electronic handbrake, I've got my start button here. I've got a little tablet infotainment screen, and from that I can control my heating because I have heating, sat nav, my music, my settings for the car. Again, this is subject to change. They've actually partnered up with Bosch, who are going to be doing all the software on this car, so it's only going to get better. It's also going to have a lot of smartphone connectivity so that you can, well, fiddle with stuff from your phone, get it nice and warm before you arrive. For example, I'm sure you're wondering what the button looks like for the extending and narrowing of the wheels. That's just here on the wheel. You press this down for 2 seconds. Obviously it's not doing anything now because I'm not moving, but when you are in the correct speed of operation, push that down, the wheels extend, push it again, they retract. Look at this, I've got steering wheel controls for my volume of my music, a nice clean gauge cluster in front of me showing me my range, my battery percentage, which mode I'm currently in. These lights here, by the way, these change colour depending on whether I'm in folded or unfolded mode. Yellow when we're extended, blue when we're narrow. I've got a blooming panoramic sunroof above me. How about that? I am surprised by the level of premiumness. And again, I do caveat with the fact that this is quite prototyping. The fit and finish is not what you would expect from a finished article, and there are a couple of things that require some attention. The indicators don't make any noise, so you're not sure if they're on. The sunken pedal box is clever, gives you a bit more room if you're a taller driver, but there's not quite enough space down there for big honking size 12 shoes like mine, so it is a bit tricky to navigate at the moment. But these are little finishing touches that I'm sure they are taking into consideration. It really is quite nice in here, and I think the thinking is that a lot of people are probably willing and eager to downsize their EV, but they don't want to lose their creature comforts. They don't want to go from their big, squashy Volvo SUV into something that feels like a sort of glorified mobility scooter. And as such, here we have heating, creature comforts, infotainment, sunroof, electric windows. It's just a little car. I suppose the question that you may quite rightly be asking yourself right now is, how useful is this really? To what extent is my life going to be improved by being able to shave 0.4 meters off my width at the push of a button? Well, quite handy from my limited experience. First of all, parking wise, 1 meter is nothing. That's motorcycle width. You could find parking absolutely anywhere in folded mode. But for me, it's the filtering thing that really sells this technology. A Smart 4.2 is 1.6 meters wide. A Microlino is 1.5 meters wide. Those are forced to sit in the same traffic jams as everyone else. Not in this. At 1 meter wide, you can squeeze through gaps and sneak to the front of the line, just like in a motorbike. The only other microcar I've driven that can do that is the Carver. But I appreciate that that is a fairly niche vehicle. Not everyone wants to be tilted around like they're driving a motorbike, and some people want a little more creature comfort. Worth noting, by the way, that the guy who invented the smart car, a chap called Johann Tom Ford, is involved with this project. He's an executive consultant for City Transformer, and he has stated publicly that while his Smart 4.2 was the first step in the right direction for better, cleverer urban mobility, that this is the next big leap. Another question I realise you probably may have watching this, that I certainly have, is just how stable is it in narrow mode? Well, I'm obliged to show you, so let's tuck them in and... Oh, this feels like a dumb thing to do. Let's just... Oh! No problems at all. It's almost as if they've decided on the correct top speed in order to ensure it doesn't just flip onto its side, Reliant Robin style, when you do that. Ah, that's silly. But suspension-wise, nice little bit of squish, certainly comfier than some of the other microcars I've driven. It's quite punchy. I can do 0 to 30 in 5 seconds, which is all you need in a city car. That's thanks to two 7.5 kilowatt motors. They've not gone crazy on the power. What's more, thanks to a 16 kilowatt hour battery pack, I've got a very, very decent 111 miles of range. That is ample. I've even got regen braking. Just picture it, 8 city transformers parked on the end of every residential street in your city, taking up what was previously 2 cars worth of parking spaces. They'd be pretty cheap to rent because they barely use any energy to run. It's the future.
One thing we've yet to talk about is the price.
Currently, City Transformer says that the CT1 will cost €16,000 when it arrives in late 2024. That predictably puts it at the premium end of existing microcar offerings alongside the Microlino, but is still comfortably 10 grand cheaper than the cheapest 4-seater electric cars. It's also worth noting that City Transformer and Microlino are currently working together to lobby against the lack of financial incentives for L7 category vehicles. Currently in Germany, as with many other countries, the government will give you several €1,000 off the price of a new full-sized electric car, but absolutely no discounts on these kinds of smaller vehicles. This is stifling the growth of the microcar segment and urgently needs to be addressed. Well, blimey, what a day it's been. A very, very cold but very good day. And what a contraption, by the way. I hope that you will agree that this is no gimmick, because the difference between 1.5 meters and a metre is the difference between being able to squeeze through gaps in traffic and skip queues and not. And giving that ability to a vehicle that also has a roof and a comfy heated seat and a reversing camera and parking sensors, that is a completely unique proposition that I think a lot of people will be very, very interested in. I wish them luck. I can't wait to see the finished article. Microcars, man. Microcars. I think I'm just beginning to realise how big a part they can and should play in our electric future, and how much better our cities will be if they do. So there we go. City Transformer, wintry Munich. Please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have been, thank you for watching.